Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Rav Shmuel, Rabbi Stephen Epstein, Rav Shmuel ben Yehoshua, with this week's Torah portion. I keep glancing over at my mobile phone here. I set a timer because I want to make sure, even though I call it my 10-minute Torah, I want to keep it under 11 minutes. I figure a minute for introduction. How you doing? Shabbat Shalom, all that. So there it is. Hope you're all doing well, as usual. Like to talk a little bit about relationships, and I want to integrate that into our parsha. I think that's very important. Relationships can go many different ways. So one of the things I took out of this parsha, which is Pinchas, from Rashi's commentary, as I've mentioned before, I like to read a different chumash every year. So I've got the Hertz Chumash. That's the one that a lot of synagogues use now and used to use. It was big. Some of them have switched to the Eitz Chaim, which is kind of a new edition. It's got a little bit more commentary. The Rabbinical Assembly of Conservative Judaism is establishing that as the new standard chumash. I kind of have an issue with it because it's got two levels of footnotes. I don't like footnotes. I don't. Going back and forth. Commentary is okay. The Rashi commentary I'm using now is okay. I mean, Rashi gets a lot into it, and the commentary gets very, very interesting for me. I don't know if folks like you lay people would appreciate it. A lot of you just want the facts. You're not as into it as I am. I'm not, no judgment. I'm just making a statement. Obviously, you do have a lot of interest, or else you wouldn't be listening to this, right? So good for you for that anyway. But Rashi gets kind of down in the weeds sometimes, talking about the construction of substituting Hebrew letters for certain words to make a point, the way the word is laid out, because ancient Hebrew is different than English. So we say land, country, right? Or land of, like land of Israel. So the Hebrew word for land or country would be aretz. The Hebrew word for land of would be eretz. They switch the sound at the first syllable, and that gives you the of at the end. So you think, oh, okay, that's all I got to do. Well, actually, it gets a little bit more involved than that, because what happens next is that you have the word Torah, right? Which is Torah, 5 books of Moses. But if you say Torah of life instead of Torah, Torah shell is Torah shell would be of, it's Torat. They put the tuf at the end instead of the hey, the T sound instead of the A, and Torat Chayim, Torah of life. So that's kind of the way Hebrew is. It can get a little interesting. The word ba as a prefix means in. So ba, be, in me, but it can also in some certain cases mean with. So Rashi gets into that, and he also gets into why. So it's very picky. If you're OCD like me, you love this stuff. If you're not, it's like, well, just tell us what it's about. So just kind of different ways of doing it. But in this particular portion, we have kind of a changing of the guard. So we have, in the last portion, we had Aaron going to his final resting place, being taken by God. And, death can be very traumatic for all of us. You're alive, then you're dead, you're done, whatever happens. I personally believe that if we're made in God's image, the image that we're made in, God not being a physical being, is God's spiritual image, which means our soul is immortal, and you can interpret that how you want. I believe in reincarnation. I believe that we go from life to life, transmigration of the soul. And there is this part of Judaism that actually accepts that and believes it. To me, it's like school. Right now, maybe you're in the 5th grade. You pass all your classes, you learn something, you have a summer vacation. Okay, so it's like your life is in the 5th grade, summer vacation is death. Then you wake up, it's like sleep, and you're in the 6th grade, and you go on to the next play, and you keep going until you reach what the Easterners call enlightenment, which means you've fulfilled yourself, and you're fully aware. Your soul, your spirit, soul, whatever is fully aware, and you're done going through lives. You've completed yourself. Some little metaphysics for you. So when Aaron died, there wasn't any trauma. He was just taken. His soul just went up to God. That's it. And the mystics, the sages, refer to it as he died. It's like pulling a hair out of a glass of milk. So there was no trauma. It's just next level. That's it. He's done. He's enlightened. And now Eleazar, his son, is now the next high priest. So, okay, so he's the next high priest. Now what? Well, at the end of the last portion, you had a couple of people, a Hebrew, an Israelite prince in the tribe of Simeon, and a princess from the Moabites, not the Moabites, the Midianites, tried to entice him and seduce him, which she did successfully. They were flaunting their relationship in front of people, which of course we know is not proper. It's not ethical. It's not etiquette. And they were basically showing their disdain for Hebrew morality. So Pinchas, who was Eleazar's son, ran them both through with a spear, and that was their death sentence for flaunting. A little extreme for our tastes, yeah, but apparently it was accepted by God, and now Pinchas is next in succession in the line of high priests. And now it's established. The lineage of Aaron is established. Aaron, Eleazar, Pinchas, and whoever Pinchas' son will be. So that's a changing of the guard. Next, we have a very critical evolution in our species. And when I say species, I mean the human species, where the five daughters of this guy, Zelophehad, who had died because of, I'll say it, his own sin, he died without leaving any sons. So the daughters are like, where does that leave us? Why shouldn't we inherit our father's property, even though we're not men, even though we're not males, because our father didn't leave a male heir? So what happens to his property? And Moses said, okay, I'll take it under consideration with God. And God says, hey, the daughters of Zelophehad speak properly, yes. And if a man dies without any sons, it will go to his daughters. And then if there are no daughters, if there's no children, then there's a whole line of succession. Another very key part of this parsha is the establishment of Joshua as Moses' successor. So Joshua is referred to in a lot of other places in the Torah as a youth, a nar. And he may not have been a youth, like somebody who's 16 or 17, but Moses was his mentor. And he was basically grooming Joshua as his successor. So you may remember that when they went out to battle and Moses was on top of the mountain, and when his arms were up, Israel was successful in their war. When his arms were down, they were getting beaten. So Aaron was on one side, Hur was on the other. They held his arms up, and it was Joshua who was leading the battle. So Joshua was very, very loyal. When the 12 scouts went out to look at the land and they came back, Caleb put up a fight and Joshua put up a fight saying, hey, we've got God on our side. What are we worried about? We've seen it time and time again. Joshua was loyal, and he was the logical successor for Moses. And he was humble. When we get to the end of the Torah, the final haftarah of the Torah is the first part of Joshua, showing how the succession of leadership. We had Moses go off into the desert, and he's gone. And now Joshua is taking over. And we see how he starts to face his challenges. The haftarah for the Parsha of Shalach Lecha, send out the spies, was Joshua sending out 2 spies to Jericho. That's the connection there. And it was a completely different result, so a better result. One of the things about Joshua, and this really hit me because this is kind of my background, is Joshua related to people on their terms. He was what we would refer to today as a humanistic psychologist. Doesn't matter what I think. Doesn't matter what's going on in my life. What matters is when I'm counseling or when I'm doing what they call pastoral counseling. I'm a rabbi and I'm listening to people. Okay, there's no judgment. I accept people from where they're coming from. I don't inflict my judgment on them. And I work with them on their terms. I do this with kids when I'm teaching them. I'll try my first goal when I'm working with someone on their bar mitzvah or something is to see how they learn, what makes them learn, and go with their way of learning. And the kids, they thrive. That's how people thrive. And people feel respect. You're listening to them. You're relating to them on their terms instead of imposing some judgment, some set of terms that they're not familiar with. And that's what made Joshua such an exceptional leader. And I think and that's a good lesson, I think, for this parsha. And this is where I'm going to leave it. That listen to people, right? Two ears, one mouth. Listen to people, listen to what they're saying, and relate to them on that level. Okay, Shabbat Shalom. Here's my greeting. Okay, my ayin 70, right? Okay, love you all. Thank you for listening. Hope you're having a great summer. Enjoy the beach. Watch the water. It's waves are rough out there today. This time. Okay, Shabbat Shalom.